Welcome into the BAMA Elite, brought to you guys by Touchdown Alabama. Of course, before we dive into the matchup that took place on yesterday with the Crimson Tide being defeated by the LSU Tigers, do want to remind you guys, when you're not listening to us here on the BAMA Elite, you guys can check out the Big Game College Football Podcast Network and audio stream for the best podcasts and audio streams inside the South. Be sure to hit that like button while you're here, subscribe button, be notified and everything. We drop content on our YouTube page. Today I'm here with our breaking news reporter, Patrick Dodd. Pat, big game yesterday. Of course, the Crimson Tide were defeated. Well, first off, before we dive into anything, how you doing today, man?
Oh, I'm doing good. Learned a lot yesterday, I think. A lot of misfortunes just came to fruition, and yeah, I think I'm doing good, but I'm sure like a lot of Alabama fans out there are hurting.
Yeah, for sure. And like we always do, and we pretty much dive right into everything. There's a lot to dive into. We can go into so many different directions when you take a look at this game, but I think a lot of people's mind is on what you talked about earlier, the play calling on both sides of the football. Alabama's offensive and defensive coordinator. We've seen throughout the season, Alabama fans have continued to go after Pete Golding and Bill O'Brien. And me and you have been guys who have been a bit hesitant on that because you know that a lot of times it's the players and how they go through the play and how effective they are doing the play and how effective they are doing what they are supposed to do. But going back to that last game, you can sort of understand the criticism a lot more, I would say, specifically for me on the offensive side of football. I said a couple of weeks ago, I felt that Bill O'Brien was slowly going away from the run game. He look as if he was just slowly but surely going to start abandoning the run game. You just take a look at Alabama's last game. I think they ran the football when it comes to their running backs like 7 or 8 times in the first half. And when you average that up, it was about one carry a drive. Then he came back in the second half. I guess Nick Saban really got into him like, yo, we got to run the football. Then he came back on that first drive in the third quarter. He basically ran the football on that one drive more than he ran in the entire first half almost. And I just this is one of the trends I've seen from Bill O'Brien, along with the questionable play calling. His route concepts have not been the best for sure. Alabama has not been effective at getting guys open in terms of the route combination. So I think that has been cause of concern. Unfortunately, it was one of the reasons why the Crimson Tide were unable to pick up a win on yesterday. And to be honest, I felt LSU took advantage of that. They spied Bryce Young with a fast young linebacker because they know, hey, he gonna make plays off script a lot of times. So once he make plays off script, I don't want a defensive lineman in space with them. I'm gonna put a linebacker in space with them. A fast, speedy guy like the Perkins kid, and he could be effective. So that is what I saw from Bill O'Brien. What are some of your concerns when you take a look at the coaching staff over in the play calling in that last matchup?
Yeah, so like you, when we've been talking throughout, and everyone who listens to this podcast has heard us talk about how, we've been a little bit reluctant to just come out and straight out criticize the play callers and the play calling necessarily because, Alabama, they've struggled in terms of development in wide receiver this year. Bryce Young has been hurt. There's just a lot of moving pieces. And I try not to be necessarily knee-jerk in regards to coming after a coach or just coming after someone's job because I feel like this might be sound a little bit stuck up, but I feel like our words matter in our sports coverage and whatnot. But I know what I'm gonna say something right now. I don't think there's any way you can bring back Bill O'Brien next year after this performance, after the bye week and what such. And this was a colossal coaching failure, I think, on Alabama's part, just from top to bottom. When you have 2 weeks to prepare for this game. And I believe on the broadcast, they discussed how Bryce Young had a kind of a pass count in throughout the last 2 weeks and whatnot, just really trying to make sure that shoulder is healed. But so when Bryce is coming into the game and out of rhythm, you want to scheme up some plays, get him some wins, and they look good on the first drive until he threw the interception. But after that, there was just no rhythm to the offense. Three and outs in a row, 6 points by the half. And a lot of the time, Alabama scores came from Bryce Young just making it up on the fly. I mean, when Bryce Young, he had to be Houdini again late in the game to take the lead to Ja'Cory Brooks, where he escaped four times. He almost got sacked on that play, and he had to escape, and he found Brooks down the field. And like you said, we brought up the route concepts and whatnot, but I just feel I just don't think that after the product that we saw yesterday, that you can there isn't an argument I can make to defend Bill O'Brien. And it's just been happened too often, and it's to this point in the year, it's kind of I can't defend it anymore. And Alabama's in such a tough spot now going into next season. They've kind of, and a lot of people are talking about this online about them wasting someone like Bryce Young's talent on offense just to make it so hard. And a lot of the times we've talked about this too. Alabama shoots themselves in the foot in a lot of these situations. Another game where there's a ton of penalties and drop passes and just sloppy play all around. They let the crowd get involved in the game and shake them. They haven't been able to play well on the road in 2 years now. And look, it's just come to the point where change has got to happen.
Yeah, and I think that is what a lot of people are going to be watching when it comes to Alabama moving forward at that offensive coordinator coaching position. I think the biggest thing is, I know a lot of Alabama fans always talk about Bill O'Brien moving on to another coaching job, but if I'm another school, what do I benefit from hiring him? I see the same thing that you guys see. He has the reigning Heisman Trophy winner not making plays in the game plan. He basically make plays himself. Like you said, he has to be a magician all the time trying to make a play. And I think that has hindered Bryce Young in a lot of ways, in my opinion. And it's crazy that Bryce Young, I don't know if it was his shoulder or lack of confidence in the play call, but like I guess we're gonna switch our focus to him now. This was obviously the worst game we've seen from Bryce Young. Yeah, with him being a starter. And of course, like I said before we started the show, he's kind of due for one because he reigning Heisman Trophy winner. He's always been a great player, making great plays, always special. He's a special player. But unfortunately, last night it was his worst game. I'm not sure some plays if he was throwing the football away, if he was trying to throw the football in the dirt, or I'm not sure what exactly was going on a lot of times.
Yeah, I felt like it was just he didn't have the timing with his receivers. There just seemed to continue to be miscommunication. I think just Ja'Cory Brooks on the sideline, it happened a lot where it looked like he was just throwing a fade route and he was just running upfield on whatever it was. I couldn't tell who was right or who was wrong, but the answer is that both of them were confused. They didn't know what to do. And especially too, there was a slant over the middle where Bryce threw a bad ball. The timing is not there. They looked so that a lot of fans and Nick Saban discussed this too. You never truly know how what a bye week can do to a team. And it looked like it had a really, really negative impact on Alabama's offense from a passing standpoint because the timing was so off on so many routes throughout the entire game.
Yeah, for sure. I saw that. I know a couple of them in particular. I think he was expecting Ja'Cory Brooks to do some type of comeback route. He just throw the football, and Ja'Cory Brooks was basically running up the field. And I think that sort of went along with it. I think even though the season has been going on, this was the 9th game of the football season, and we said we have been looking for Alabama's offense, specifically the wide receivers, Bryce Young, to continue to gain confidence in each other. But it seemed like he was not confident in the game plan, in my opinion. So he went with the wide receiver he was most comfortable with. Ja'Cory Brooks got targeted so many times throughout the game.
I think it was 17 earlier or something like that. This just one of the guys you can trust. It was either went to Ja'Cory Brooks or it went to Jahmyr Gibbs over the middle.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing which was weird to me in this matchup is I felt coming into this game and moving forward, I think Bill O'Brien needs to simplify things. Like he needs to give, like you said, Bryce Young some easy throws early. He can get easy throws throughout the game. Everything does not have to be down the field. When you're watching Alabama play on TV, it almost looks as if when you're watching, every wide receiver goes out of the screen every play. Like the only person you see on screen is like Jahmyr Gibbs because he's like the safety valve a lot. So it seems like every route is like 5 to 10 yards deeper. It almost is. That's another thing I always see when I take up. This is what I've noticed over the last couple of weeks here, and I think that first drive we saw some different things. We saw tight ends going in motion. We saw like this is a misdirection where they throw the ball out to Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he was going back the other way. And I was like, oh, Bill O'Brien, and he has gotten some creativity in his game plan. I was like, yo, it was not anything super complicated. It was something super easy. The throws were easy for Bryce. The misdirection kind of frees the defense. He gave Jahmyr Gibbs the ball in space. And I thought that was going to be where Alabama's offense was going to go in that direction throughout the night. But they abandoned it after that first drive. They didn't go back and have a drive that successful throughout the whole game almost.
Yeah, and it really felt like they never had the momentum either. And it was just the summation of that was that first drive when Bryce did the interception on the goal line. I mean, it would have been a great play. It was a good decision, bad throw, but and then after that, I mean, the field positioning kind of came into play here, but it you know, you got to move the ball at some point. They had 3 and outs in a row when they were deep in their own territory, and whether it was penalties, miscommunication with receivers, it just wasn't working out. And honestly, too, like we got to give credit to LSU too. They did play well, but I don't think this is one of those great LSU teams. Going into the game, I was shocked they were ranked 10th. I didn't necessarily think that this team could. Well, I mean, I guess they are. I think Alabama would be closer to LSU's level than LSU would be rising to Alabama's. But I don't know. I don't really know what the words are for it. But this just wasn't one of those LSU teams coming into the game that it's not one of those classic teams that I see like a million NFL players on that side of the football that they can match Alabama's talent with. So it was just I don't know. It was just such a culmination of all the bad things that we've been noticing from Alabama this season, and it came back to bite them.
Yeah, this is exactly what I said at the end of the game. Like, no one, if you're an Alabama fan, an Alabama reporter, you should not be surprised by the end of this game because this is what we saw all season. It's just a combination of everything coming together at the right time for the wrong mixture for Alabama, and it comes up with them losing the football game. Because to be honest, I felt Bryce Young has covered up a lot. He has covered up a lot this season. He has covered up a lot this season, and I think that is what we saw on last night as well. But
I was going to say too, I know we're upon a lot on Bill O'Brien, the offense. This is an entire coaching failure. I think Nick Saban does have to deserve some blame for this because the same mistakes we've seen for the past 2 years haven't been corrected. And I know everyone's very, very frustrated online with the 2-point conversion calls and whatever. I know he explained it by using the scorecard and whatnot, but that's not necessarily the reason why I'm too upset about it. It's just more the little things, the things that you don't see from Alabama. It's the untimely penalties. It's the getting shaken in the hostile environments. It's just not what we've come to see. And some of that has to go back on Nick. And, so that I think that Nick, this is just from the top down. He said after the game that he deserves some blame. I think, the coaching staff needs to step it up here because when you look down the line here, and going into next season, this is again, I'm just throwing this stuff out there now. When you're looking into the future, you're just looking ahead here. In my opinion, Alabama is going to be the most vulnerable it's ever been under Nick Saban next season. Just looking at what they're losing on the offensive side of the ball with Bryce Young, who covered up so many mistakes for this offense in the Bill O'Brien era, and on defense, you're losing just about everybody. You're losing Will Anderson, Harry To'oTo'o, and all the defensive line depth. Jordan Battle, DeMarco Hellams, Brian Branch is probably gone too. You have so much to replace on that side of the ball. And throw on top of that, what if Nick Saban does change coordinators? Then this is a completely new slate. I think Alabama is next season is going to be at another crossroads, much like it was back after, I think it was around 2013 when they had to update their offense. They hired Lane Kiffin to the staff to kind of update things and move it along. I'm pretty sure I have that year right. It was whatever year after they lost to Auburn. They brought Lane Kiffin in, changed the offense around, and adapted. And I think that they're at another one of those crossroads where they need to make some changes here soon. And they're going to have the players to do it. They have good recruiting classes, but they got to get the right guys in there to help develop these players and just go get back to that Alabama standard because they're not playing like it right now.
Yeah, I think we're definitely at like you said, a crossroads. The first thing that came to my mind was I felt like this is the first time me personally felt like, this might be the first sign of the dynasty being over. Not saying that it's over yet, but it's like a first sign that it's possibly heading into that direction, because based on what you
And
said.
this would be big coming from you and I. We're been so,
Yeah,
so I guess pessimistic is the
yeah,
word. To be like, make these such definitive statements. Like, I agree with you. The dynasty is not necessarily over yet because Alabama still has an opportunity to win 10 games here. There's a lot of programs that kill for 10 wins, but that's not the standard that they set for
yeah.
themselves.
Yeah, and I think we also, we talked, of course, Nick Saban. I also agree with that. I think because he is at the top, and that's why he wanted to take some blame for that, because he is the head coach. He makes the final decision on everything. But of course, during the game, of course, we don't know how much control he has on every single play, but he pretty much has control over the entire game plan for the most part. But taking a look at the defensive side of the football, Pete Golding, Alabama's defense, I think had some miscommunication. I think it was more effort for the defense for sure. And I think that goes back to Pete Golding, because he just doesn't come off as a guy that empowers these guys in a way that we've seen Alabama's defensive coordinators do so in the past. And I think that is why a lot of people are going to point their eyes towards Pete Golding, because it wasn't a horrible game by Alabama's defense. Heck, if they didn't play as good as they played, this game probably could have been a game where LSU probably won a game by a couple of touchdowns.
They could have went off the rails. And in the first half, they held LSU to 7 points. To me, up until that point, I was actually really impressed with the defense. I thought they were doing a good job containing Jayden Daniels and not letting him use his legs or get in a rhythm with the passing game to really hurt them. But the second half was a different story because they lost him out of the pocket. He had some crucial scrambles. But the thing that I thought was really apparent is that the tackling was really, really bad. They missed a lot of tackles. They had arm tackles. It was another thing. It's another way they were affected by the bye week, I think. It's just a whole week where they probably, again, we don't go to practice, but I don't know how much tackling was really done these past 2 weeks because they've been banged up this year a little bit. They have some bumps and bruises. They probably wanted to give them a rest, but I think at the end of the day, that probably hurt them coming into this game. And it was apparent when LSU picked up that crucial, I think it was third down on their last drive where they ran the ball on 3rd and 6, and they were able to pick up the first down, which set up the touchdown in the end of the fourth quarter. I mean, that's the kind of the culmination here on that with all the missed tackles going back there at that game. I mean, it was just really, really sloppy play at the end. And look, I can't. Again, this is. I know we've been critical of the coaches. Pete Golding definitely deserves some flack for this game. I don't know if it's the DEFCON level of he's got to go too. I know some fans are very upset with him, but this is what I will say. If Alabama is going to have, I think Pete Golding is a good defensive coordinator, but next year, if your offense is going to be middle of the pack, you can't get away with just a good guy. You need an elite guy. And so I think that just might be the tax. They need to get an elite guy in there, or they got to get elite players in there, or they need elite player development going into next year. And I don't know if that Pete Golding's necessarily that guy. He's a great recruiter, but what we've seen in the product we've seen in the field, it hasn't matched that level.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that, Pat. Pete Golding, in looking at the future of the next year for this Alabama team, like you said, losing so much, so many young guys will have to come up and step up all over the field on both sides of the football. Losing 2 of the best players in college football easily. Those guys are going to be top 5 draft picks. They are projected to be on multiple draft boards. So yeah, that's going to be hard to replace. And I felt that Alabama was going, like you said, it's hard to look at what their offense will be next year, because we've seen what Jalen Milroe has shown us, and it wasn't great. It wasn't something spectacular that Alabama fans are even excited about at the moment. So we are not even sure what Alabama's quarterback situation will even be next year.
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier, I don't think you can bring back Bill O'Brien, because I don't think he's proven to develop the guys around him to help Jalen Milroe develop as a passer. He's not going to give him those easy completions that he's desperately going to need. And when you look at the Texas A&M game, he wasn't like, he had that great run against Arkansas, but I don't really recall there being any sort of schemed up run plays. They were kind of just running Alabama's offense, but instead of tailoring everything to Jalen Milroe. So in terms of that, he either needs, if they do bring back Bill O'Brien, he's going to need to make a monumental jump in the passing game. Almost he can't. He's not going to be Bryce Young. No one's going to be Bryce Young. He's got to be really, really good through the air. Or Ty Simpson needs to take a huge step going into next year and take over the reins of the offense. Because from what we've seen in the Bill O'Brien era, if you don't have an elite level quarterback, and I'm saying like top 5 NFL draft pick, they're not going to be able to move the ball consistently through the air at all, or on the ground. Because I think the most frustrating thing about Bill O'Brien, like you mentioned earlier, he gets away from the run game, gets a little too pass happy. And so if you don't have a quarterback who can really move it through the air, I think they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, for sure. I think they definitely have some questions to answer in the distant future, but also in the near future. But before we go any further, of course, we have our guys over at Prize Picks who partners with us. Pat, you can give us some information about what Prize Picks brings to the table.
Yeah, so at Prize Picks, all first-time users that deposit and use our promo code will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you back $100. Prize Picks is the best way to have action on the game in states like California, Florida, Texas, Georgia, and over 70% of the United States. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So how does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go out and score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. At Prize Picks, you aren't competing against the other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport you watch. This includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's and women's college basketball, and more. Prize Picks entries can be made 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Download the Prize Picks app today and using the promo code BAMA100 when you sign up. Again, that promo code is BAMA100. We love the guys at Prize Picks. They're just a great fantasy app that you can use just to get in tune with the game. I don't know how successful you're going to be projecting more or less with Alabama's offense because it's so up and down, but we've had a lot of fun using it. But yeah, but getting back to the game here, I had another thought, but I think I lost it. It was something to do with Alabama's offense. But anyways, it'll probably come back to me at some point. But here's the question that I wanted to pose to you too. Is this the most frustrating team of the Nick Saban era? Because I think it is a resounding yes. The only other team that I could probably think of is that 2010 Alabama team after they won the national championship, when they had all those guys coming back with Julio Jones, Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, Greg McElroy, that defense, and they went 9-3 in the regular season. They've dropped games to South Carolina, Auburn, and LSU. So I think those two teams are probably competing for it. But in my eyes, I think this is definitively the most frustrating team I can remember watching. I'm just curious to what you thought about that.
Yes, I think it are. I think it's, like I said, I think it's undoubtedly yes, because this team, I think, is a combination of a lot of different things. The undisciplined things, of course, the penalties, simple penalties. Of course, if they're getting called for pass interference, you're like, that's going to happen. All of that. That's every game in college football. I think pass interference, I think the numbers and stuff going up across the board, that those pass interference calls. But those consistent false starts and offsides, those are frustrating for a coach. And I think that is something that Alabama just hasn't had an opportunity to fix. I mean, not have an opportunity to fix it. They haven't fixed it. They have had every opportunity in the world to fix it. Consistently been on the road in hostile environments. They have not lived up to the test to turn those things around. And I also think the biggest thing also is the fact that the play calling is not helping them at all as well, specifically on the offensive side of football, what we've seen from Bill O'Brien. So I think it's just a combination of what we talked about for this whole show, the play calling, how undisciplined this team has been. The wide receivers are not good as the wide receivers have been in years past. You can put some of that on the fact that they are on the younger side. They will continue to grow and continue to get better. So I think it's just a different combination of a lot of things. Also, I also want to bring this thought up to you because I watched the Georgia game, of course, Georgia defeating Tennessee. And I think the thing that everyone is talking about when it comes to Georgia is basically they play like the old school Alabama team, specifically on the defensive side of football. When you take a look at Alabama and Georgia on the defensive side of football, the biggest thing that stands out to me is that front seven. That's the biggest difference. Alabama has an experienced interior defensive line group, but they do not play consistently great at all. I can't even say they play consistently good. I bring up this fact, and it's not, I won't say it's fact, but it's my opinion during our watch party. I was just saying, like, if you have any friend or anybody who likes another SEC school or any school that Alabama went up against earlier in the season, can that friend name anybody on Alabama's interior defensive line? Because I don't think they can. I don't think they remember them. They're not.
I'm
They have not.
going to go as far as saying no way. There's no way.
Yeah. Yeah, they have not done anything memorable, and I think that's something Alabama has to fix. Whether it's on a recruiting trail, whether it's challenging Freddie Roach to develop these guys better, I think it has to be a different mentality inside the defensive line room because those guys have not lived up to. I won't say they have had any hype because I don't think the bar was really high for them just based on them coming into the season and how people were talking about them. And it's kind of crazy because DJ Dale, Justin Boyd, Bryce Young have consistently played since their freshman year. Experience is not the problem. They've been on the field for the last 3 to 4 years.
I think it goes back to development, kind of like how Alabama's offensive line last year. They had a lot of talent up there. It just didn't develop. And I think we saw that this year with the coaching change to Eric Wolford. We really see like a player like J.C. Latham emerge in the offense. I know he didn't have his best game yesterday, but throughout this entire season, he's been great for them. I think it's a little bit of the same issue on the defensive line. You're just not seeing these guys popping. Now, Jaheim Otis has been actually a pleasant surprise for Alabama this year because he's just a big guy in the middle. He came in, worked his tail off, lost a ton of weight, and he's on the field immediately. So it's going to be interesting to see how he develops. But I think it goes back to Freddie Roach a little bit, just getting that player development phase. Like, he's also a fantastic recruiter, especially on the defensive line. All these guys have a bunch of stars attached to their names. It's just more along the lines of that player development that they need. And I think you brought this up too a few weeks back about how Alabama needs to get, maybe in terms of the recruiting, they recruit just super athletic guys on the defensive line, but just those bruisers, that just those run stoppers up front that are super physical. And I do kind of think they're getting back to that with a guy like Jaheim Otis. You would know better in terms of the recruiting coverage. Like, do you see in terms of Alabama's defensive line recruitment that they're kind of getting back to that, or am I just making stuff up here?
To be honest, they never went away from trying to do it. To be honest, they just have been getting beat out. They've got beaten out by Texas A&M, who I think Texas A&M always does a great job of building their defensive line. And the Aggies have basically bullied Alabama on the recruiting trail when it comes to defensive line. The physical guys that Alabama has went after, the McKinley Jacksons, the Bobby Brown, some of those top guys in that top recruiting class that Texas A&M had last year, Walter Nolan, some of those, I think Anthony Lucas, those were guys who were at the top of Alabama's board, but they were not able to pull them in. I think that has negatively impacted Alabama. I don't think the thing has been that they don't want those guys, but they've had problems landing those guys in recent recruiting classes. And I'm not sure how they fix that because it is Alabama. The program sells itself a lot.
Yeah, and I think that goes to a larger point here about how we've kind of seen Alabama's grip on the SEC just loosen a little bit. And I think that's because just count the amount of quality coaches that have joined this conference now. Just going back through the years there have been a lot of great coaches in the SEC. There have never been more great coaches than there are right now. If you just look at LSU, Brian Kelly coming over from Notre Dame, his first year, he couldn't get over the hump at Notre Dame. And the second he comes to LSU and he has close to the same amount of talent as Alabama, they win. And then you look at someone like Lane Kiffin, who's gotten Ole Miss back on track here. And I know I know people have mixed feelings about Ole Miss, but they're top 15 team now. They're competitive. Alabama's got to go to them next week in another hostile environment. So we'll see just how back they are. And then you obviously have Nick Saban, and then Sam Pittman, everyone poo-poo. And I know he's not having necessarily the greatest season, but Arkansas is competitive again. And then You just talk Jimbo Fisher. I know they're a dumpster fire right now, but just the amount of high profile guys. Josh Heupel is another guy who's just come out of nowhere, beating Alabama. Kirby Smart, Mark Stoops. I can name the entire conference here, and it's only gonna get more competitive if Steve Sarkisian and then Oklahoma with I'm blanking on Brent Venables come over from the Big 12. So there's only going to be more quality coaches that are going to be joining this conference to kind of poach guys here and there from Alabama. So that's part of the reason why I think their grip kind of has loosened here in terms of necessarily building out and filling out those old school Alabama teams.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the last thing I want to ask you about, I know this is sort of giving Alabama fans some hope. The optimistic Alabama fans want to just hold on to some hope because it's not entirely over. LSU hasn't clinched the SEC West just yet. They have to win one more game, if I'm not mistaken. Of course,
they'd have to lose their last two games here, but it's happened before.
Yeah. It's to be honest, I think it is durable for sure. Because like I felt the same way about this LSU team. I feel like they're not horrible, but they're not as good as the teams that they've had in the past. They definitely don't have a talent level that some previous LSU teams have had in recent years. So I think Alabama's chances of reaching the college football playoffs are very, very, very really low. I wouldn't put a lot of faith in the college football playoffs. But I think the SEC championship, playing in the SEC championship, is something that is still in the air, possibly in play. But you have to become Arkansas fans. You have to become Texas A&M fans for the rest of the year for it to happen.
Yeah, to add a little more hope here, both those games are on the road. Yeah, both those teams have head coaches Arkansas, again, that's a hostile environment. That's a decent team. That Sam Pittman is not a guy that's going to roll over for them. And Jimbo Fisher could be coaching for his job. So those are going to be two games right there where those two head coaches aren't going to want to roll over. And so just going back to Alabama here, it's going to be really important for Nick Saban to rally these guys to just believe and stay focused and keep the ship right, because I think this is a really crucial time for them, especially going to somewhere like Ole Miss, just finishing the year strong. They really need to emphasize that, and they need to brush off this out. They need to find a way to get this message to the players that, hey, this season may not be over. And I will say this: if Alabama does reach the SEC championship game and is able to win, I know they're a 2-loss team, and I'm not saying that this will happen, but if there was ever a 2-loss team that would get the benefit of the doubt in the college football playoff, it's Alabama. They've earned it. Obviously, they would need some other outside factors. I'd have to look at it. If there's more undefeated conference championships, then that might be a little difficult, but you never know with the committee, because they just aren't really necessarily a set of rules that they're following, which is kind of how they feel from week to week here. But if there was a 2-loss team that would get the benefit of the doubt, it might be Alabama. But then again, this team might not necessarily be worthy of that spot based off how they've played. But look, there's still some season left here. But I think next week against Ole Miss is going to be another very, very difficult matchup, just the way they play, and they got to get back on track quick.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, just looking at like that possibility of them possibly still having a lot to play for, like you said, if they're a 10-2 SEC champion, of course, a lot of things have to fall out and happen, and Ohio State and Michigan got to play, and a lot of teams play in conference championships and all those things, and all those things will figure themselves out for sure. But I think the biggest thing that Alabama will be working against them is, I guess they can change that though. I was saying that the biggest thing working against them is the eye test, but the eye test can be changed. You can change the eye test by playing better.
Ole Miss, and then they crush Auburn. They may be able to right the ship a little bit, because that tennis, like both these games look. I know we said Alabama's looked really, really bad. Both those games are like 3 1-point losses. They're very close games and very hostile environments, and they obviously obviously Tennessee's a respectable program, and this committee had a ton of respect for LSU, putting them at 10 when someone like me did not think they deserved that spot. So you just never know.
Yeah, I don't think it's over. Chance of slim, but
there's a chance.
Yeah, there's a chance. Alabama fans just have to become Arkansas, Texas, and them fans.
Yeah.
Gonna hurt them a little bit to cheer on Jimbo Fisher, but that's just how the ball rolls.
Alabama fans are going to do an absolute 180 on Jimbo Fisher. Coming into this year, he was probably the most hated person in their community, and now the last week of the season, he may have a ton of Alabama supporters.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that would do it for this episode of the BAMA Elite. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you're listening to us at. We'll see you guys again Thursday to preview the Crimson Tides matchup with the Ole Miss Rebels.